Hey guys, it's a snowy day up here in New England and nothing better to do. So I figured I'd do an interesting video on a problem that I had with a blend door actuator on a Honda CRV 2012. So the symptom I was getting of the problem was that I'd set the heat on the climate control. And initially, after I set whatever temperature I want, 75 degrees, 80 degrees, whatever it was, right away the vent would feel, the air would feel as if it were at the right temperature. And then as I was driving along, within about a minute later, the temperature would start to drop. And I did this multiple times. And every time it would go to the right temperature initially, and then as I was driving with the road vibrations, the temperature would get cooler, much cooler to where it was almost like just letting in fresh air completely. So what I did was I took off the blend door actuator and tested it. Actually, before I took it off, I did the onboard test, which you can do on the Hondas. It has onboard testing, and that passed. It came back and said without any codes. So I said okay, and then I figured it probably doesn't sense that there's a problem because the actuator goes to the correct position initially, which is when it's testing. It doesn't test like a minute later to see if the position had changed. So I said, all right, let me take off the actuator. And Honda gives you some specs for these, which is 1 volt on. No, actually, you have to do this. Well, the voltage test you have to do with the actuator installed. So it's 1 volt with the low temperature, and then 4 volts at high temperature, at the high end of the range. And there's let me see if I can get the pins. There's those two pins on the left. That you can measure the voltage across those pins. Actually, the back of the connector. So that passed. And then there's another test with you can do with the actuator off the car, which is those 3 pins on the right. You have to have about 6.5 kilo ohms on the first and third pins on the right. And that passed. It was right there, right on spec. It was 6.5. So I said, all right, well, this thing passes. Why is it changing position on the blend door, as I'm driving around? So anyway, I got a new actuator off of eBay, actually, an aftermarket one. Installed it. It's working fine. And I said, oh, let me do an autopsy on this one. I got nothing better to do today with the snow. And so here it is. I opened it up. And as you can see, there's when you're measuring the voltage, you're measuring the voltage going to the motor. There's this little motor here. When you're measuring the resistance, what this is over here is an electromagnet, and it's a brake. And this holds the gear. This gear. This gear right here fits into this. And when the electromagnet is enabled, it holds this gear in place, and then that won't move. So what's happening is it's not a failure of the motor. It's a failure of this brake. And even though it passed the test with the resistance, there was something I think worn out about the contact. There's a contact. There are contacts on the back of this. I don't know if you can see it, but after so many motions on this, it looks like this pad gets worn, and there's actually another little piece. There's some contacts that go across this. I lost that little part, but it's like a spring contact that fits on top of here, and that kind of wears slight grooves into this pad, this black pad, and it looks to me like that loses connectivity at a certain position, because this rotates, this brake rotates, you can see. And when it's in a certain position, I'm assuming that it loses mechanical contact with the pins. Because when you're testing the resistance, you can't move it. You can't move this gear into different positions to test how the brake is in different positions. So if you just happen to test it at a position where it works, which is going to be usually low, because that's the way you have to take it out, according to according to the Honda manual, the service guide. You have to set it to low so that the gears mesh in the right position. So when you're testing it, you're always testing it in the low position, but the problem occurs when the temperature is higher. So it looks to me like these pads get worn out at a higher temperature over time. And there's a shiny spot, but I don't know if you could actually make it out. It's more on the top of that. But that's what I believe is happening, is that it's more of a mechanical worn out nature on this brake. And the only way you can detect that really is just to get another actuator and install it and see how it works. There's really no test you can do. I mean, you could, I guess, rotate. You could get a battery or something, rotate the motor, have this gear go to different positions and test it that way. I guess you could do that, but it's a lot of work for, this part's kind of cheap. It's not really worth wasting your time over that. So anyway, if you have that symptom and that's what you're getting, that's what the problem is. It's this electromechanical brake is worn out. And the other question I have to you guys, now maybe there's a genius out there like Musty One, would that be cool if he was watching and he could explain this, is this motor, when you apply power, this motor goes to a certain position. And then with power off, like there's no power on it now, I can't turn this gear. This gear will not turn. See, it's locked into place. So my question is, why do they need this electromechanical brake to hold the blend door at the right position if this motor doesn't turn without power? It seems to be very much locked in there. I'm putting a lot of pressure on it and I can't get this gear to turn. So I don't understand what the need is for a brake if the motor is going to hold the door in place. And I can't get it back together. But when it is back together, this doesn't move, even with the electronic with the brake off. So I mean, the motor seems to be holding it with no power. So I don't know why you need electromagnetic brake. But obviously, in my case, it failed without the brake, and the door was able to move. So I don't understand that part of it. So maybe if somebody out there knows and can chime in the comments, that would be interesting. All right, guys, thanks for watching.